you very much. It's actually kind of funny because it's the second time I'm at the ICD. First time at the new, well, building. Very impressive, I have to say. Because it was in 2012 that for the first time I met Mark at the, you will all know, the annual conference on cultural diplomacy. Back then I was a bachelor student presenting a research paper of mine. And the event was so well organized and so grand in its format with all these diplomats and scientists and politicians. I was very much impressed. And so when we, as a German Cambridge Society, were contemplating doing an event on the refugee crisis here in Berlin, pretty much the only sort of cooperation partner I could think of was the ICD, because you know it, you experience it all the time. They're truly great at organizing events, and they've established themselves as a true brand in this field, I may say. So I'm very happy that they agreed to co-host this event with us, or well, to host it to begin with. So we contributed Dr. Miley from Cambridge. It's basically our contribution, and Karl-Erik Norman, great speaker. Thank you for being with us today. He was sort of contributed by the ICD. You are also a member of the teaching staff. Thank you very much for being with us today. So, couple of words on the German Cambridge Society, because you may wonder what is that exactly. Some of you have an idea. Yeah, it's basically the largest alumni group, Cambridge alumni group in Germany. And as such, we have some 200 or so members. Not all of them are paying their membership fees, but we'll get there. So we're quite large by comparison to other groups in Germany, and so we are actually registered as a charity, and we actually have a constitution and a mission statement. And one of the most important missions that we have is to further good intercultural relations. And to this end, we organize events like this one today. Yeah, but this is not the only thing we do. We're actually very proud of the fact that we use our membership fees to sponsor grants, to enable, now since last year, it's 4 Cambridge students to come to Germany for 3 months and to participate in intensive language and cultural programs. And we pay for all their living expenses, including rent, travel expense, etc. That's something that is unique to us. Whereas other alumni groups, they really only are busy with networking amongst themselves. And also we promote engagement with the German culture abroad by financially supporting the Cambridge University German Society. It's a student-run organization that organize cultural events, and they help foreign students learn German. So I think it's good that we support them in doing that. So, as far as the topic of today is concerned, I also have a couple of takes, so to speak, on this issue. I guess, though, most speakers will agree with me. We were at first contemplating maybe doing an event on the Brexit, but honestly, by comparison, the Brexit, first of all, this Article 50 hasn't been invoked yet. It may only come in the future. It's not actually a pressing issue, I may say. And by comparison to the refugee crisis, or the war in Syria primarily, as a root cause, it fades in terms of significance. So we had to do this, like we had to. And I think it's a pressing issue not because we as Europeans must fear a negative impact on our material well-being or on our physical security, but it's primarily a pressing issue because hundreds and sometimes, you know, depending on the weather on the Mediterranean, sometimes even thousands of people die. So it's primarily a humanitarian crisis. And as such, it presents a really, it's not just a challenge, it's a real test for the EU and the Western world also as a community that has certain values. And sadly enough, we're failing this test currently. I mean, if you look at the grand scheme of things, we're not doing a good job at intervening either in Syria, fighting the actual causes in the countries from which these people flee. So, and one of the things is also we fail as the West, as a political and as a security community, to find a resolute answer to Russia's aggression in Syria, yeah, against certain parts of the Syrian population at least. And also we fail to somehow reach an agreement on how to deal with Assad. Like in the long run, we probably all agree he must go, but how to get there and what to do with him in the meantime, to determine his value in the meantime, there is no real agreement within the Western security community. So instead of addressing the root cause of much of the refugee crisis, which is the brutal war in Syria,
Our leaders prefer to broker deals with the likes of Erdogan, or some even go that far that they prefer putting up fences, essentially denying innocent people refuge from war, which is outrageous. So that's the humanitarian crisis and the challenge that we face. But the refugee crisis becomes a European crisis primarily because also of the way it's been handled by the political establishment. It brings to the fore the ugly face of racism more generally and Islamophobia in particular. Yeah, I mean, if you look at Geert Wilders, Marine Le Pen, Nigel Farage, the AfD folks in Germany, these are, if you get to the core of their message, these are essentially racist. And it's sad to see that they managed to mobilize thousands of people in the capitals of Europe. I mean, this is yeah, for a global citizen, this is a shocking thing to see, especially when they shout slogans like, "We are the people." It's truly disturbing. So secondly, the refugee crisis becomes a European crisis to the extent that we increasingly value security over freedom. I think that we must constantly remind ourselves that the idea of Fortress Europe is diametrically opposed to the Europe conceived by the fathers of the EU. In fact, the freedoms that we enjoy today, they are born out of the traumatic experience of the Second World War. And so now denying, living in peace, but denying refugees of war access to the safe haven means denying our values, and it means denying our European identity. And ultimately building fences and letting the people, helpless people, on the other side of that fence die a miserable death is not just a cruel thing, but I think it's inherently anti-European. So in that spirit, I would like to hand over to Dr. Jeff Miley. Thank you very much for being with us, and the floor is all yours.